Welcome to this seminar, mainly about all the news in SOLIDWORKS 2023. And with me today, I have Lennart Tinndahl, mostly known from Tinndahl from the train, that will show us some tips and tricks in the different areas throughout the presentation. But let's jump into it. So first, a little about me. I've been working with SOLIDWORKS since it came to the Scandinavian market back in 1996. I've been working with 3D CAD systems since '94, mainly Pro Engineer, and different kind of 2D CAD systems since 1989. My work area is primarily SOLIDWORKS, SOLIDWORKS Visualize, SOLIDWORKS Electrical schematic, more or less most of the different areas of SOLIDWORKS packages. The 3D Experience platform, I also work around in custom tools and in DriveWorks. And back in 2018, I got the SOLIDWORKS Elite Application Engineer Award. On the private side, I'm from '69, I'm married. I have kids, but they have moved out. I know Lennart will brag about kids in a moment. And I live in just south of Roskilde here in Denmark, where I'm also today is working from the home office. So, and a little about you, Lennart.
Yes, well, my name is Lennart Tinndahl, and I have 17 years of experience with SOLIDWORKS. I work in PDM, 3D Experience, and DriveWorks mostly. I am a co-author of the SOLIDWORKS Tech Blog. I'm a presenter at 3D Experience World this year and also next year. I have been with PLM Group for 6 years now, and as Martin said, I also do a LinkedIn series called Tinndahl's Tip from the Train. On a personal note, I was born in 1975. I'm married with 3 children, and I live in Højby, which is in south of Odense in Denmark, where I'm also located today. Yes.
And a little extra thing is that you in next year will be live at the 3D Experience World, right?
Yes, I will. With Tinndahl top tips from the train. So that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So, but let's jump into what we are here for today. Mainly about SOLIDWORKS news. That will be what I will show in the core area. And we will start with the user interface. We have had in the previous version options to put in comments in the feature manager. Now it's also been possible to put comments directly on surfaces, on models, so you can see what surfaces that is related to. There has come some extra things about resetting to default settings. And then we'll talk a little about the render system. The render system they have been working on upgrading since, for what we can see, 2019 version where it came out in as a beta, but they probably worked a little bit on it a little before we saw it. But let's jump inside SOLIDWORKS. Here we can see we have a sewing machine, and I have all the mechanism inside. A sewing machine can be a difficult work tool. There's a needle going up and down, so we need a little warning label on the inside here. So I'll just go in and open the part, turn around a little bit, and then on this surface I would like to have a warning label. If I right click, you can see there is a comment option down here, and I can go in and say add comment, and now we can go in and see I want a warning label here, please. So there's also options to go in and put in a screen dump of how the model is orientated, so it's easy to see how it's orientated. And we can also go out and browse and put in pictures from other sources, so we can in fact put in where the labels should, how the labels should look. Sometimes these comment, if you have a lot of comment, you'll have to a way to sort them, what is important and what is not important. And we can do that with different colors. We have different colors up here. And each of the colors can also have a description. And if you click the little gear here, you come into options, and you can see here we have the description we could go in. So we can go in and say we want this to be warnings or something like that. I'm just canceling out. But one thing is that it is important, and we want to emphasize that there's something that is important here. But what if people don't see that as a comment? Then there's an option to go in every time we open this model. This warning or this comment should be jumping up so we can see it. So now I just press save and we'll just close everything here. And if I go in and say open, you can just take it from the recent files. You can see here now the comment come up to me and tell me, hey, remember this, this is an important part. And when we have taken care of it and I put the label on, we can just simply unclick it up here and it will not show up every time we open the model anymore. Sometimes we have a user, our favorite supporter, could be Lennart, running around helping us with stuff and on a computer, or it could be a coworker. And maybe they can't find the toolbox they want to have, so they go in and then turn on all kind of toolbars and so on. And then I'm sitting here with toolbars over here and toolbars over here. I don't really want that. So now I can, of course, as in previous version, go in and say I want to reset that to default. But with 2023, I can go in and say I only want to reset the toolbars. I don't want to mess around with resetting my command manager at the same time. I, of course, can also go in and reset everything. In this case, I'll just reset the toolbars. Some things, when you reset your user interface, it will not be updated before we restart SOLIDWORKS. So it'll come up with a little warning about this. So next time you'll restart SOLIDWORKS, you will see all the changes and all the resets. And then we have this enhanced graphics. If you go in under options and under performance, we have this enhanced graphics performance. Can also only be turned on and off when you restart SOLIDWORKS. SOLIDWORKS, if you don't have a check mark there, you will be running on a graphics kernel in SOLIDWORKS that is like 20 years plus old. They have rebuilt a new one, and that's the one you run when you turn this one on. But the benefit is that it can take care of, can utilize the whole graphics card you have in modern machines and modern graphics card, where previous version could simply not use the modern graphics card. So it's very important that you go in and turn that one on. And one of the things they have done in this version is they have updated about zooming and rotating. And we have a little video here where you can go in and see how it looks if you have it turned on and if you have turned it off. And you can see there's a big difference between the two performances. Often you go out and buy a really expensive computer with a lot of hardware, a lot of graphics power and things like that. But if you don't use that options, you don't utilize that, and that will be a shame, spending money on that. Sometimes we hear that people have to deselect that because they get graphics errors and things like that. Most of the time, well, if not all the time, we have found out that is simply because the graphics driver is very important in that step. So we have made a guide on how to select and install the NVIDIA graphics driver. If you go into SOLIDWORKS website and look for what graphics drivers that has been certified, they are way behind. If you have a graphics card that's 2 years old, you will have a driver that's 2 years old or something like that. But go into PLM group, either DK or EU or whatever country, click on the support, change this up here to English, and then go in and search on select. And there come up an option here, select and install NVIDIA graphics driver. And there we have an 18 steps guide on to select and install the graphics driver. And if people are using this one, we have seen a very few problems with it. Often it is related to laptops where you have to go in and remove or deselect, so you cannot see the internal graphics card that is on the CPU, the Intel graphics card. And as soon as that takes effect and the driver from the Intel graphics card is uninstalled and things like that, we don't see any problems. If you run into problems, then please contact on our support, and then Lennart or I will help you figure out how to solve it in your case. So that was a little about the user interface and performance in SOLIDWORKS 2023. So Lennart, do you have some tips and tricks for us now? You need to unmute your mic before we can hear you.
Okay then. Sorry. So can you see my screen?
Yes, perfect.
Great. Okay. So first off, I want to talk a bit about a feature that came, I think it was in 2019, where you get the option to reorganize your task pane over here. Previously, it was just you could only look at this, and then if you had an add-in, it will probably appear over here. But I think it was in 2019, you got the option to reorganize your task pane by using this cogwheel. So if we press this, then you can see here we can not only hide the different tabs, but we can also reorganize them. So I want to go here and see. I also want here, and then I want File Explorer here to be my default. So this is one I look at whenever I open SOLIDWORKS. It starts here with File Explorer, so I want that. And speaking of File Explorer, in this is actually a very cool tool you can use. You can actually see the files you have opened within SOLIDWORKS, and you have different codes here. First off, you have this. This means that it has been changed since it was last opened. That's why when it's in bold writing, and if it is in orange writing, it means that it is write protected, as I've done here. So that's also a pretty cool tool to use when you have a lot open. You just want to see, okay, what has changed, what is read only, and etc. It also works within PDM. So if you have your PDM and you open your file, you can see, well, all these are not checked out or read only. So, oh yeah, one thing I want to show you, it's the color picker here. If we go and just, click there. So as you know, we can set colors to different, to our different features. They can get different colors, but you can also use the color picker. I'm just going to make this a bit smaller, and then going to select our website here. So I want to add our website colors to this model. So what I do is on the color picker, I hold down the left mouse button and just drag to where I want it. I want it here, for instance, and then you can select the color, and we can also go here, appearance, and this time I just go here and I just want my own background here. Great, so you get this light blue, this blue background. Okay, this looks nice. As you can see, I have a few different features that is suppressed. This is because I have a few different configurations. But how do I know if some of these features are actually not in use anymore? Because when you work on a part, you can get a lot of features that you no longer use. So one way to clean them up is to use the purge unused features. So what you do is you right-click on your feature tree, and you go to purge unused features. And here SOLIDWORKS will tell you which features are not in use, which features are suppressed on all of your configurations. So I find this one, boss extrude, that is suppressed. So I'm just going to press OK. And then it's deleted. It will still keep the sketch, but you can just run it again if you want to. Purge unused features, and oh, there we go. The sketch is no longer in use, and let's see what happens. So now I have cleaned up my part, and it should be and then you won't have as many features. And that can also be used on assemblies. You clean up, you purge your assembly for any parts that is suppressed and no longer in use on that. Martin, are you ready with the next step?
Yes, I am ready to take over. There is also one thing about that purge you showed on part that will also work in assemblies, where you often have both mates and components, and it could be really difficult to see what's what in around the system. So you can in fact go in and run this purge on assembly level, and that way you can go in and see what is not shared, not in use in any of the configurations.
Great, thank you.
So a very good tip to clean up the model, especially if you get a model that somebody else have made. But back to the news in SOLIDWORKS 2023, and now we go into and look into parts and features. One of the things we have when we go in and make a wrap feature is a limitation in the previous versions, is that we could not use a single line font. It have to be a double line font, so it's like split the surface into multiple surfaces. With 2023, we can go in and have that, and just have this little like line directly on the surface. We have now the option to add library features. Even if there is errors in them, we can go in and put them in and then edit them directly into the model. We don't have to go back and change the library feature in order to get it in the first place. We have the option to add construction lines to ellipse, like we have on our rectangle, where we can go in and have like center line or from the corner to corner. And now we can, in the ellipse, have the main and the small axis of the ellipse. So make it much easier to go in and put relations on. When we use the move copy bodies, there is now support for equations. There will also be added dimensions, and we can go in and use those dimensions also in different configurations. And then when we have the D features, in previous version, we could like go in and save it for future use, or we could save it into a new part. With 2023, we can also have it as a new configuration. So it's very easy to use inside assembly, and then you can just change the configuration in order to get it with the full details. So let's jump into SOLIDWORKS and look at that. I have SOLIDWORKS here, and I have a little part. And you can see here that I have a sketch, and that little sketch only have like a single line font that we like to wrap. So I go in here and use my wrap feature, and I can wrap it up to this surface that is up here. In previous version, it have to be like in the E, where you can see you have an inner surface and an outer surface. With 2023, we don't need that limitation anymore. So now we can go in and have a font like this and use that. We like to have a logo here on the end surface, and I have here in my design library. We can here see the anchor point is a little off compared to the text, so we get an error. But we can just say OK, and then now we can go in and edit the sketch. Set it to normal 2, and then select everything. And then I can move the logo into the position that I like to have it. I don't have to go back and edit the library feature in order to get it in correctly. In the previous version, we have a new hotkey, the Q key, where we got all the planes. So we can now go in and select a plane and say, I want to add a new sketch on that plane. And as soon as I click somewhere else, all the planes disappear. If I go in and use my ellipse, you can see I now have the option to add constructions lines, and I get the main and the minor axes, and I can go in and click on these lines and go in and make relations directly. So now we can go in and make some relation to control where the ellipse is. If I go in and use dimensions, I can go in and click directly on the line, and in this case, we'll go in and add this to a global variable called the length and place that in. I want to have a distance up to this edge of 3 millimeters, and then I want the small axis here in the ellipse to be 3 millimeters, something like this. You can exit the sketch, and we'll just put the model direct in isometric. And I can go in and say I want to extrude this 3 millimeters. Now I remove the merge result because I want a body that I can work around with without the rest of the model. So now we can go in and say I want to have a circular pattern, so we can get an extra body a little to the side like this, 15 degrees, and we'll just have 2. If I go in and use this move body, then I can go in and move this body right here. And in this case, we can go in and use a global variable to control where that's placed. In this case, we'll use the spacing, but only the half of it. So I'll just divide that with 2. If I go in and click on this move feature, you can now see I have the dimension. So you have a dimension that you can use both in in configurations and design libraries, but also you just go in and click it. In previous version, you have to go in and edit the feature in order to change the dimensions for this move. We want a little more, so I go in here and again click the surface here to rotate around that one. I want both bodies, and in this case we want equal spacing, and I want 12, so we get like all the way around in a nice pattern. We'll also want the length of the model. I'll just go in and click the surface here. You can see we have a little arrow here down here. so I can easily check what direction my pattern will be in. I go in and take the bodies, and I'll check all these bodies, and we can go in and see I have the pattern. And now I can go in and say, I want this to be controlled by the spacing, and this one will be the instances. Just don't need that 8. And now we have the pattern that is right here. Sometimes there comes a day and Lennart came to me and say, okay, we don't want those sizes, we want something else. So now I can go in and manage in equations, because now we have all this pattern controlled by the equations we have in here, or the global variables. So now we can go in and say we want the length of 10, we want the spacing of 14, and we want 6 rows down the length of the model. And I can go in and say, okay, and now we can see the models updating. A model like this, if you go in and put that into assembly and put in a lot of these components, it will be heavy, no matter what. At least just put in 1,000 more, and it will be something that will take the performance out of your model. So in SOLIDWORKS, we have this where we can go in and defeature the model, where we can go in and remove details that's not important in assembly. And you can go in and now I just click next. And in this case, we want to have all the holes, because there's some holes that is important for mating or something like that when we put it into the assembly. SOLIDWORKS will now, based on the selection I have chosen earlier, come up with a preview, and then we can see the preview over here. You can see we have not removed that many details. But if I go in and click here and I say I want this feature, the main ellipse that I extruded, it will automatically take all the child's features with. So now I can go in and say next to this one, and now you can see I have a much simpler model that I can use in my assembly. And now I can in fact go in and create a new configuration. Simply say okay, and now I have 2 configurations, a simple one and one with all the details. And now I can simply, depending on the assembly, just select what configuration I need. And maybe some areas I need the simple one, and in other areas I need to have all the details, because you can see the details. But often it's not something you can see in the whole assembly, and you can take benefit of a simpler model. So that was something about the parts and features. Lennart, are you ready? Some tips in the parts and features area?
I am. So I've created this, and you'll see later why I have one called wrong. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen.
Yeah, you need to share your screen first. It makes it a lot easier for the rest of us to follow you.
I think so. So sorry, there we go.
We can see the screen now, yeah.
Great. Okay, so I have this called wrong model. You'll see why later. So for instance, if I want to create a small extruded cut here, I'm just going to create a sketch. There we go. And so with this extrude, I can use the increments down here to increment the length of my extrude cut, and I can use the arrow keys to increase my increments. But what if 5 is not enough? What if you say, okay, every time I want this to be 10? Well, then we can, of course, we can use, just going to say, okay. And we're just going to our options and go into spin box increments. We can set this to 15. Let's just say 15. Oh, 10 I think is better, than it's more obvious. Great. And I'm just going to try again to extrude cut. And as you can see here, if I use the arrow key, I can it increases by 10. So you can set up your increment in whatever way you want. If for instance I'm just going to create another sketch here. When you create a sketch, okay, hang on, and go out here. If you create a sketch, for instance here, and there we go. So if I want to exit this sketch, I can move the mouse up here. But if you, for instance, have this widescreen, you can just press the D button, and then the exit sketch button will appear right next to your mouse pointer. So there we go. I'm not going to use that. One more thing I want to show is the ability to copy many of your features to your model. For instance, I have this wrong model. I just want to, if I hold down Control key and drag the feature to your model, then you can actually copy it. Okay, that's not okay. That's okay. And the same thing with fillets. If I want to copy them, hang on. Hold down Control, drag the fillet to your where we want it. There we go. And I also want one here, I guess. There we go. That looks special. So it's also a quick way to copy the different things you have already created. So, but what if, for instance, you have a more complex model? This is not that complex, but if you have a complex model and you want to select the line behind here, you don't want to rotate your view. Well, then you just left click on your model, and up here you have a select other option. This option gives you the option to select other things than just the things you point at. For instance, here I have select the face here. I can also select other faces if I want to, the sketch, get contours, and that's an easy way. If you have a very complex model, then select other is a very good feature to use also for you. And I think that's about it for now. Okay. Yeah, I think that's all I had for parts and features.
Another little thing about this, you move from one surface or the feature from one surface to another surface in the same model. You can also copy to another model. So you can simply have two windows with different models, and you could copy a feature from one model to another model. So you don't have to go out and make a library feature or copy the sketch and things like that, but you can simply take the feature and copy that from one model to another model. So a very easy way to reuse stuff from one model that you have made that you need to be now on a new model or a new version of the model or something like that.
Yes.
So,
thank you.
No worries. Thank you. Now you should be able to see a PowerPoint at my assemblies now. Assemblies is one of the big areas. There's a lot of like small things that make every day a lot easier. The first thing is that this skipped instances in patterns can now be configured. So when we go in and make a component pattern, we can now skip the steps. In previous version, we had to go in and suppress the different, make the full pattern and then suppress. I will show you in a minute. We can now control the default configuration that will show up in a bill of materials. Then we have some extra options and a little clarification on replace component. It's much easier to see what's going on, especially if it's a command you don't use very often. Repair missing mates references is giving a little more feedback. Magnetic mate can now be controlled by configuration. So if we have different configuration where maybe not all the magnetic mate need to make sense in all the models, we can now suppress them. And then additional end condition for assembly level cuts. In previous version, when we make an assembly cut, we didn't have the same options as we had in a part. When we were sitting inside a part, we could do a lot more than we could in assembly. They have now caught up, so now we have exactly the same options in assembly cut that we have in a normal cut inside a part. Then we have one here called propagate assembly features to toolbox part. It's in fact because we have now SOLIDWORKS will automatically deselect toolbox components when we come in and use that propagate assembly features down to the parts, because it don't make sense that we start to cut inside into the toolbox components, because they are standard components. They're not supposed to be changed by assembly cut. The assembly visualization now support lightweight. We don't have to resolve the whole model. And then in the end, I will show you something about automatically optimized resolve mode. In previous version, we have been used to, like if you have worked with big assemblies, we have to load in lightweight, and sometimes we have resolved too much and we go in and change it back to resolve lightweight mode and things like that. SOLIDWORKS has now made an option that will go in and more like put all that into our automatic gearbox instead of the manual gearbox we are used to, and take care of that. But I'll show you a little, and I will tell you a little about an example on how it can give you better performance. But let's jump inside SOLIDWORKS. You can see here we have a assembly layout. And to start with, we'll work on this little conveyor that is down here. I'll just open this sub-assembly. And we can see we have it in here. And if I go in and just hide the conveyor, we can see we have a lot of axes, and on all this axis there is a lot of roller bearings. They are very expensive, so we like to optimize that a little bit. So I'll just go in here and open this sub-assembly and go in and see what we can do in here. First of all, we like to have different configurations. I have already made some different configurations here, and I want to remove some of the roller bearings. In previous version, we have to go in the pattern here and select, okay, I don't want this one, and I can skip these two as well. And then I can go in and suppress them. So now if I go into the other configuration, you can see it's other components in here that is suppressed. But now we have 2023. So now we can in fact go in and use this skipped instances, and you can see there is the icon for configuration, so we can control what configurations we are skipping in. So now I can just go in and say, I don't want these 4, press OK. And now we can see they're not showing up in our pattern. So previous version, you have to make the full pattern first, and then you go in and suppress what you didn't need. Right now, you can simply go in and say, I only want this in my pattern. So a lot easier to control for us, but also less calculation time for SOLIDWORKS. Inside the configurations, if we go into properties on the configuration, we can control what will be shown inside a bill of material if we use this as a sub-assembly. And it defaults to document name. That's most of the cases we want the configuration name. So I can go in and click OK now, and now I have changed that. But every time I make a new configuration, I have to go in and make sure that it is set to that. There is now an option on the document properties, so it's following the document, that you can go in and set the configurations should be the configuration name. That will be the default bill of material part number for new configurations. So an extra step we don't need to spend time on anymore. One thing is that we have reduced the number of roller bearings, but let's say we also have found out we have some other type of bearings that we can purchase that's a lot cheaper and do the work. So now we can go in and say, I want to replace this component that is down here. Just go down and find my replace component. And it more or less look like we were used to, except this little area here. Now you can see we have 3 radio buttons. In previous version, we only have a checkbox, and that was all or not all. And if it's not all, then you kind of need to know that it will replace whatever you have selected up here. In this one, you can go in and say, okay, now it's set, it's only the selected. So you have like a feedback making special for people that don't use this command very often, that they know what to do. And then we have an extra option called all in the same parent assembly. So we have an extra step in here. What will we replace it with? We have a rubber wheel out here. I can go in and put that in instead. On purpose, I will deselect the reattach mates, because then I can show you about the repair missing mate references. So I'll just say okay, and you can see we got some errors out here. There is some mates, one mate in this case that has failed. We can go in and right click, and then we have this auto repair. We can also do that on the mate group and auto repair. And the thing is, now we get a feedback up here saying what does have been repaired. We can go in and say we want to edit, we can undo. And if you just ignore that little box, it will disappear after a second or two. So we get some feedback on what it is that we have gone in and changed. So, but let's jump back to the conveyor here. And I have some, just have to find them, they're up here. Selection set, we can see I have 2 selection set here. I can go in and say all these, I want them to be the new version 1 of the alternative axis. And now we can go down and take this one down here. Like this. And now we can see we have reduced the number of bearings with a lot. Plus we have changed it to a cheaper version. So we have saved some money on the project right here. So now we can go in and put in back the conveyor. Sometimes when you're sitting and have assembly, you need to make what we call assembly cut. We need to do some changes on the model, but we do it on the assembly level because then we can cut multiple parts with the same sketch. And we know if we change that sketch, we will update whatever that is needed to be updated. It will be updated on all the parts. So I have a little sketch here. And if I go in and use my assembly feature cut that is located down here, I can now go in and cut with that. In this version, we can now use all the options that we are used to in cuts. In previous version, the assembly cuts has less features here that we have in a normal part. So now I can go in and say up to surface, and I can use this select other that Lennart just showed us to go in and select that surface. I don't have to rotate the model to select the other side. Instead of just saying, okay, I'll just go down here. You can see here there's one called auto select, where SOLIDWORKS will automatically select all the features that will be, all the parts that will be cut. I have the option to go in and manually select what I like to have to be cut in. And you can see I have selected a different parts here. There is one part I built myself, and there is different, there is in fact toolbox component. Now I'll go in and say I want to propagate this feature into the parts. So if I open the part on its own, this feature will also be in the part. So I can go in and see how that will look. But I don't want to do any changes to the toolbox component. And in fact, SOLIDWORKS don't want to do that as well. So it will automatically deselect all the toolbox component, and we get a little feedback up here telling us what has happened. So now we can say okay to that one. I'll just keep all the bodies. So, and if we go back here, so now we have made this assembly cut. In this case, we have this conveyor in different configurations, and one of them is like a 8-meter long version, and there is like areas where the packages or whatever that is running on the conveyor can go out the side here. So in our publisher, you can see here we have a lot of connection points, both for the side but also for the end of the conveyor. But if I go into the 4-meter version that don't have any side options, it doesn't really make sense to have all those connection points like this. So now what we can do now is we can simply go in and select this, and then we can go in and suppress them. So when I go in and insert this component, they will not show up if I use this configuration. So let's jump over to the big assembly here and look at that. So I'll just say I want to put in this assembly, and you can see if I put in the 4-meter version, you can see I have only the 4 connection point. If you go down and change it to the 8-meter version, you can see I have all the 8 connection point that is in the 8-meter version. So a little extra step there where I don't have to go in and do all kind of weird stuff to get this up and running, and it's much easier to connect to the right points, to the right magnetic points. We still have some components out here. You can see there is a lightweight. If I, in previous version, went in and used this assembly visualization, then I will come up with a thing that's saying that I have to resolve all the lightweight components. I don't have to do that anymore. And now we can just go in and add an extra column, and we can go in and say that should show us the graphics triangles. That will show us which component that is heavy for the graphics card to load or show on the screen. Often you like to filter this out a little more, and you have this line. You can go down here and you can see when you come with the hand, and you see to get a little more be a little thicker line, so it's easier to grab and move around, and we'll update the model and will not show all the component that is below this line. So it's easy to see which component that is the one that is the heavy. It'll come up here because I have not recalculated the model after the changes I've done. So with a little warning about that. So a little easier to do that. Also, when you go in and want to export this to a step file, in previous version, it will get one step file with all the components inside. With SOLIDWORKS 2023, we go into the export and go into the step. You have the option to export the assembly component and separate step files. So you simply have a step file for all the components, for all the sub-assemblies and things like that. So especially when you have a lot of parts that is going, like you have multiple times, they will have each their own file, and you have a step file that is like just combining all those step files. I have done that because it's taken a minute or two to save, but here you can see this is the assembly has saved out a separate step file, and you can see, if I can find them, you can see here there is the step file for the configuration for the assembly we just made, alternative 1 with the 8 rollers. So a very good way to reduce the amount of data you have to send if you're going to send a step file to somebody. When we talk about performance and file size, you all probably already know this set to resolve, and you go up here and set light trajectory resolve and set resolve to lightweight, and maybe you played around with it because you're working with big assemblies. In SOLIDWORKS 2023, we got a new version, a new option. So here under performance, you can go in and say automatically optimize resolve mode, hide lightweight mode. So what we in fact ask is that SOLIDWORKS is more or less just removing those options from the view that we cannot see and take over the control and optimize the performance in the background. So if I go in and click this one on and say okay, you can see I no more have the lightweight feathers. And if I go in here, you can see I don't have the option to set resolve to lightweight or lightweight to resolve. So also another thing that is, if I go in and say file open and go in and check this one down here, you can see there's no option here to load in lightweight. What happens is that SOLIDWORKS will in the background control all that. So we have this little example. This is an assembly that has like 11,332 components divided over multiple level of sub-assemblies. In the previous version, we can open it resolve or we can open it lightweight. But this we put a little twist on because we have made an error in some sub-assembly in this little scenario where we'll go in and look how this can optimize our workflow. So if I just click to the next, if we open this resolve, we'll open the assembly. We'll find this what's wrong with the dialog, with the model. There's an error somewhere. We'll in Feature Manager get that where the error is. We can expand that Feature Manager to that area, repair the model, and we are done. If we are in lightweight mode, we'll still get the what's wrong dialog. And if you go down and look at the Feature Manager, we cannot see anything. So we have to manually find and locate the sub-assembly and the part where the error is, resolve it in order to go in and fix this error. So compare those two workflows. You can see we don't have any tree warnings or feature menu warnings. We have to search ourselves, and we have to make sure that this component is resolved in order to get it in. The benefit of the two workflow is that if you look at the resolve, we can just expand the tree and we can edit the model because it is already loaded. Lightweight open the parts really fast. So what SOLIDWORKS have done here is optimize this. You can now open the assembly. You get the what's wrong dialog box, like in the two other scenarios, but you also get the feedback in the Feature Manager. So now you can just open the Feature Manager, repair the model, and you are done. And if you take those three scenarios and put them up to each other and look at this assembly, the loading time in resolve is like 2 minutes and 12 seconds on the machine that this test was run on. And it expand and repair the error. The error was just go in an equation box and say reorder the equations because they were calculated in the wrong order. So that was the only error there was. It took like less than 3 minutes. In lightweight mode, it took less than a minute to open the model. But in order to resolve and find the model or find the area, it took more than 3 minutes. In optimized resolve, it took a little more time to load the model, but we'd have the benefit of all the feedbacks. So it's much easier to go in and resolve all this. So a way to optimize your workflow. And for all the people that are sitting like, yeah, but I like to still control when my model is in lightweight and so on. It's simply just make sure that you don't click this option off, that you want SOLIDWORKS to automatically run it. It will run exactly the same way as in previous versions.
And
So that was a little about, sorry?
It's a system option, right?
It's a system option.
Good.
Yeah, and it's a system option on your machine. So you and I could be working on the same project, and you can have one option and I can have the other option. So it don't follow the models. Yeah, the document. That will be exactly the same. It's just how you work or how I work and prefer to work.
Great.
So yes. Do we have some tips and tricks for us then?
Yeah, I have a few. Let's see. I'm just going to share my screen. There we go. And yeah. Okay, I just want to show this tip that that didn't work before. When using Pack and Go, you can sometimes, I think most people have tried that. You Pack and Go, you want to send this, but in this case, you actually get a file called does not belong. And you know, for instance, and if you look at your drawing here, your sketch, you can see here you don't have that placed anywhere on your drawing. So in 9 times out of 10, the problem is usually within your view palette, that it's still stuck here. Maybe because you have copied it from another or something like that, it's still stuck there. If you have saved the file as another name, then this could happen. So what you simply need to do is just to clear all and save. And if we use Pack and Go once again, there we go. Then you only get the ones you want on in your Pack and Go. So if we just try to open, let's say, take this one. Let's take this. So just want to create a quick assembly with this, and we can of course go to the features and let's see here. Hang on. Create assembly from, okay, where's that? Okay, just going to create new assembly then. Make assembly from part here. And so usually when you insert your assembly, your part into an assembly, you can click wherever you want here, or if you just click OK, then the different planes, then the part plane will align with the assembly plane. So if we have right plane here and the right plane there, so they will actually align if you just click the green check mark. If you want to move this, then all you need to do is to right click on it and press float, and then you can make it as however you see fit. So if you have, for instance, you can quickly, as with the copy mate, you can also copy your models. So if you want to create, if you want these to be a part of a sub-assembly, so you can just quickly check, just to mark them all, and right click on it and form new sub-assembly. Doing this will be formed as an internal sub-assembly, but you can of course, so it'll be formed as a sub-assembly within the main assembly, but you can also save it as an external sub-assembly, so you can use it in other files. I can see there's a bit of a time issue, so I think we're just going to jump right to the drawing parts. Is that okay with you, Martin?
Yes, sir, I can do that. Just a little thing about this creating a sub-assembly inside an assembly. If there was mates between the different components that you put inside the sub-assembly, that mate will automatically go into the sub-assembly.
Correct.
But if mates to other parts that's not going into the sub-assembly, those will in fact go outside the assembly. But if, for example, you have 2 mates that's going to different places outside the sub-assembly, suddenly you might get an error because the sub-assembly will be rigid, so that the sub-assembly will try to control what those 2 components are.
Okay.
But the mates in both directions will also try to control where the sub-assembly is. So just be aware of that.
Okay.
It can be a little tricky with the mates when you do that, because some mates are going into the sub-assembly and others are not.
And if you get into trouble, just call support.
Yeah. No, normally it is because you're trying to control the component both with the sub-assembly where it's placed and a mate from the outside.
Yes.
It's often there's like one or maybe two mates that is going on. It's just that sometimes when you create that, it's like, oh my God, everything is like, but just keep cool and just look in, or just go in and make the sub-assembly as a flexible sub-assembly.
Exactly. That's also an option.
Yeah, that's also an option. Well, we jump to the drawings. First of all, we have some new options about open drawings directly in from the drawings. So we don't have to open the model first and then open the drawing. We have a way when we go in and override the values in a bill of materials, we can now get a feedback showing what we have changed. We have in the auto balloons option to create add quantities directly into that. And we have some filters so we can filter a bill of material if we just want to see who is purchased or what's made of a special material or something like that. And then we have the option to see through transparent object. We could kind of do that when we had the model in shaded, but now we can also do it with normal hidden line visible or hidden line removed option on. So, but let's jump into SOLIDWORKS. Just have to find my mouse. And you can see here we have a drawing of our assembly. And one of the places we can go in is, of course, in our feature manager and find different sub-assemblies and so on in here. And if I go in here, you can see now I have an open drawing directly from in here, and I can open the drawing that's matching that sub-assembly. I can also do it directly from the bill of material. You can see I have an open drawing. I can also open the assembly, but I'll just open the drawing. And we can do it directly on the component where you can see I have an option here to open the drawing. So an easy way to go in and, in this case, open the drawings that I need to find without having the extra step of opening the assemblies as well. So I'll just close this one and then we'll go in and say file open, and we'll open this little assembly, and you can see we have here a bill of material. And in this case, I would like to add an extra row here in the bottom. So I go in and insert row below. And in this case, we want some DT. And that's something we buy. Oh. And this is released. Oh, hvis man nu kunne stave.
Yeah.
So, but right now I have already changed something in this bill of material, but you cannot see it. It's because we have to go in and set the color we want to see when we have done some changes. So I'll just go into the options here and in on the color and click here. And if I go down a little while, you can see we have something called drawings modified cell in the bill of material. And in this case, I'll just go in and set this to red. Okay, and okay. And I come back here and absolutely nothing have changed. I can still not see anything. It's because we want, every time we don't edit the bill of material, we just want to look like a normal bill of material. It's not everybody that need to see what we have changed inside the bill of material. But the second I go in and click inside the bill of material, we can now see that all the changes that has been made to this bill of material show up in red. And I can also go in here and say, okay, I want to restore the original value, and I get there's two items here, two in the quantity of this component. If we go up to the view up here, we can go in and say I want to set auto balloons, and in this case I also want to have the quantity. I just want the little x here instead, and I can go in and put that on the model, and now I can go in and say okay, and we can see how that will look. Let's say we want this one over here, and now there's a little tips and tricks about the magnetic line here for the balloons that's also working in other versions. So, but it's easy way to go in and make sure that your balloons is looking nice on a straight line and things like that. These four up here, they only have one quantity, so we don't really want that. So I can go in and overrule and remove that for the balloons that I don't need to have the quantity on. If I go to the other sheet, we can see we have a big or a long bill of material here. So we want to filter a little bit in that one. And you can see up here, we have like small options boxes here. And now I can go in and see, I want to just see the one that is in work so I can see what component there's still been working on. I have the option to go in and clear all filters. I see everything again. I can also go in here and see I want everything that is with something 250, and you can see, okay, that start to be a hassle if I need to select everything, because it is description, they are more or less unique for everything. What I can do instead, I can go in under custom filters, and I can go in and make my own filters, set them up. I can go in and say I want everything that is starting with 250. I can also put other rules on, either with an and, an or expression in between, and I can say okay, and now we only have the component that is starting with 250. Just go in and clear all the filters again, and now we can go in here and see the source. I want everything that is something we buy, but I also only want the things that is hardware. So easy way to go in and filter out what we need in the bill of material. And if I go in and say I want to save this as an Excel spreadsheet, just overwrite this one from yesterday, and I put in the thumbnails. Yes, we want to overwrite that one. Yes. And now you can see I have a new version here. You can see it's created today. And if I go in and open this Excel, now we have all that is hardware item with a yes, and all that is source with buy, and we have preview pictures and everything. So easy way to go in and control what you'll see inside your bill of material when you export it, or just in the drawing. So yes, and now we have this pressure gate. Pressure gate often have like a glass in front of the dial, so you cannot mess with that. And if I go in here and look at this, and I set it to shaded, you can see there's nothing changed. I cannot see anything. And it's because if I go into the assembly, the component is not set to transparent. When I go in and set it to transparent, I can see the dial. And if I go back here, we can now see the dial inside here. But if I go over and say I want a normal like line drawing, a line view, you can see I cannot see anything inside the dial. Let's see the dial inside the pressure gate. But now we have this option, see through transparent component. And if I select that one, I now can see the dial, even if that I am in just the normal hidden line removed option down here. This is also a system option. So if you go in on the document properties and detailing, it is down here, see through transparent component. If I go in and select that one, if I create a new view, I can just take the same one and go in and place that. It will automatically select that option down here. And of course, I can go in and deselect it if I don't want this in this one anyway. So yes, so that was a little about the drawings. Do you have some tips and tricks for drawings?
I do, but so people wondered, we seem to be running out of time, but let's see what we can do.
Shoot.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah.
So
if you show a couple of tips, then I'll just look into the Q&As and see if there's something we need to answer here before we end today.
Let's do that. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm just going to go here. And okay. So see, I want to use this one, for instance. Okay, so when you create your drawing views, you can actually import your different your dimensions. So for instance, here I have, if you just remember to click import annotation and design annotations, you can just drag it in, and then it will, and then you will have your dimensions. One cool thing about this, I think, is actually you can change your dimensions from here. So if I want this to be 1400, and just going to rebuild, great. So that actually changes, and if we look at the model, just open that, we can see here that it has, just going to open that, that it has changed to the 1400. So that's also a very cool way to do it, to import your different features. What you can also do, I just want to close down, see, I just want to close this drawing here. One thing you can also see if you have changed different dimensions. So if I just say all, and you can see if you change a dimension within a drawing. So if I take this and change that back to Let's change that to 1250, I guess. Great. So if I go and open the drawing, okay, for some reason I didn't remember that, but that's okay. And then you can see here that my dimension has an orange color, and that's something you can actually set up within your options, within your colors. And down here, you can use specified color for change dimensions on open. So that is also a very cool thing. You can actually see if our dimension has changed since the last time this drawing was saved and opened. So if we, I think, one thing we can also do if we just create a quick projected view is how to move your dimension from one view to another. So here we use the Shift key and just drag the dimension to the other view, and then I can actually move the dimension from one view to another. If I want to copy the dimension, I just hold down the Control key and drag it, and then you can have two just like that. One final thing I just want to show is how you can view multiple sheets. In this case, I only have two different sheets on my drawing. But if I, for instance, want to view both of them at the same time, I can just, while on this sheet, I can go to Window and just click on New Window. Then I'll just close down this, say no, and just go to this one and change that to sheet 1 and horizontally. Then I can see both sheets at the same time and also work on both of them basically at the same time. And I think that's all I had about drawings.
I think that will be everything from us here today.
Yeah.
And wish you all a nice day and present holidays when it come around here in a couple of weeks. So thank you for attending. Have a nice day.
Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.